According to Adam Schefter in Chicago, there were conversations, said Schefter. I don't know how close they got, but yes, there were conversations about whether one of the solutions was to bench Caleb Williams. But to bench him to give him a break and try and save him. So, brother. So 2 times this week on our show, 2 credible guests, one that's played in the NFL for 18 years, and Greg Cosell, 45 years of watching film. They're not fanboys. They're not on bare message boards. They watch film. And let's start with Greg Cosell. This is about as harsh as Greg Cosell gets on criticizing a young quarterback.
In 2 years at USC, he got sacked over 80 times. And there were a lot of people that were concerned that was not just an O-line issue at USC, that was a Caleb Williams issue. And right now, it's coming to fruition a bit in the league. So this was not a Shane Waldron problem at all. Right now, everything is happening too fast for Williams. He's not been able to slow down the game mentally, so he gets stuck in the pocket waiting, and you can't do that. At this point, he too often lacks an effective internal pocket clock, which also forces him to stay in the pocket too long holding the ball. And the last point is he's a slow recognizer and processor. He's not making the needed connection between route concepts and coverage. So all this leads to an increased number of sacks.
Okay. So that I find really interesting, because I told you that I wanted to highlight what Greg Cosell said, and now this clip ends up being kind of 2 things. One, if you remember, Nick Ray doubted that there was any like real conversation about benching Caleb Williams and the vets, and now Adam Schefter reported it, and I mean, it's pretty much universally seen that everything Adam Schefter says is like 100% truth. Like that's his whole thing, right? Like he has these direct lines to players, GMs, coaches, whoever. And so it's like, if Adam Schefter says it, it's like, okay, then it is then it's a fact, right? Like he's essentially their microphone. And so, yeah, I find that, man, what's unfortunate about the idea of benching is how players take it. I think people need to understand that so many of these players, the amount of emotional maturity they have, first off, they're kids. I love how we always try to act like 22, 23, 24-year-olds. You're a man, and you're just not. I mean, I love how people try to act like that means like you're a man. And most of the time, these guys, they can't even grow a full beard yet. Their brain is still literally developing. Your brain is not fully developed until like you're around like 28 years old or so. So it's like your brain is literally not fully developed, but we want to act like these people are grown men. And so the emotional maturity isn't there. So it's hard to handle like a benching like this or a conversation like Caleb's going to hear this, and it's going to affect him, unfortunately. And when you have these athletes who have to ride the line of such extreme and intensity to be able to compete at the levels that they do, it's different than you and I. They have to go to this next level. They have the ability to go to this next level, but then because of that, they can also have the negatives that come along with that. That's why you don't see like super grounded, regular, like kumbaya players being able to like excel and be elite. They don't become those kumbaya people until like well after, right? Like Mike Tyson was ready to like really do some awful stuff, and now he's all like, hey man, it's all about love and peace and joy and serenity. And it's like, okay, but you couldn't have that when he was in his prime. It just is what it is. Kobe Bryant was willing to just, eat your head off. And then after his career was over, then he was all just like, always smiling, really calm and collected, well-spoken. And he did not have that energy when he was on the court. He had no friends. Post-career, friends with everyone. So it's just a different mentality. So unfortunately, benching him mid-season, if it would have potentially been the right move, because they talk about like what is a retreat, and you have religious retreats, whether you're Christian, whatever, and it's people sometimes see that as like kind of like a cop out, kind of like an escape, when it really is like it's no different than going to war. You have to retreat sometimes. Sometimes that is the answer to save lives. The answer is to retreat, to come back home, to be like, we need to take a timeout here. We need to reassess and figure stuff out. So the way how this season was unfolding, technically, if we didn't have to worry about anyone's emotional health, and I know that's a sensitive subject with Caleb because people want to jump on Caleb and act like he's this super sensitive, emotional person or whatever, when he is just as sensitive and emotional as everyone else out there. Okay? I'm very confident in that. He is not exceptionally emotional, despite you guys all want to talk about him painting his fingernails, which again, I guarantee you, there are so many other athletes out there that do some of the most bizarre, weirdest stuff you could ever imagine. It's just human behavior. The only difference is he's got the confidence to do it more out loud, which is definitely a thing as well. That is worth discussing. I will admit that. But the benching would actually make sense from a practical standpoint, to be like, all right, the season's not going as planned. I'm not liking a lot of the things that you're seeing. It's hard to work on it in the season right now. There's a lot going on. The locker room is getting upset. The vets are getting upset. We're going to have to just pull back. We're going to have to just kind of like hit the reset button. And that would make sense. Again, like almost every other profession, that is what you would do. But because there's so much money involved, fame involved, reputation involved, pressure from fans, media, ownership, whatever it may be, you don't actually get to do what's right. And this is what I keep saying too. Like, being a quarterback, we say that it's the hardest thing to do in the NFL, and yet we throw out like a 22, 23-year-old and say, best of luck, get out there. When the reality is any other profession, you would not do that. You would be sitting for a year. This is why Andy Reid sat Patrick Mahomes. People always try to argue, no, he was ready. If he was ready, then he would have played. If he was ready, he would have played. You think Patrick Mahomes in his first year, his first year of starting, he looked the same that he did when he first got drafted? And Andy Reid was like, nope, I see that you're the most amazing quarterback I've ever seen, but we're just going to sit you just for fun. Like, really? It doesn't make any sense. It makes literally zero sense. So there was obviously plenty to work on, plenty to grow, develop, maturity, all of that type of stuff. And so that is what I would have done with Caleb Williams. If everyone said that he could be the next Patrick Mahomes, well, then follow the Patrick Mahomes path. Sit him for the year. To me, that was the original sin. It was. I am a huge proponent of sitting a quarterback for a year. Which is why I said, hey, this is actually going to be good for J.J. McCarthy that he tore his meniscus, because realistically that shouldn't really give him any type of long-term issues for his like actual playing career itself. And now he gets to sit for a year, no problem, get to learn, sit back. Unfortunately, he's had some setbacks with that, but it was the silver lining that I found in it. So, yeah, has Chicago failed Caleb in his rookie season? It's just a mess. I think it's like, and this is what I keep saying, and I will have to just unfortunately keep repeating it, is that they failed each other. The team failed him, the coaching staff failed him, and Caleb has also been a part of that as well. And that's what Greg Cosell is kind of calling him out for. But then it's kind of like, well, okay, but can coaching get that out of him? They talk about, and I think it was Kurt Warner that talked about this, like, you can't coach processing speed. He goes, there's a lot of issues that quarterbacks have that people say, oh, a coach will work on that, or they can develop him. And he's just like, there's certain skill sets that you can't coach, that you can't just be like, okay, you're going to be a better processor. Now, can a better coach work around that? Can they set up an offense where he needs to maybe process less, right? Where you're going to have more of these, more kind of like ABCD progressions, or less less offenses that are designed on you having to read it. Like that's what they do with, say, Russell Wilson. Greg Cosell has talked a lot about that that's not Russ's strengths, that he's not a pure progression type quarterback, that they do a lot of these more no read design throws, stuff like that allows Russ to kind of excel. And it's obviously worked. Maybe like that is a style offense that you do with Caleb. I'm never going to act like I'm not an offensive coordinator, so I'm never going to come here confident like this is what they need to do. I mean, there's about 30 people out there that have any type of confidence of what to do with Caleb and how to maximize it. So I'll leave it to like those 30 people out in the NFL to share those opinions. I'll withhold mine. But I think it is interesting. It is definitely a problem. It is definitely concerning to see. But I'm not also of the camp where we're just like, okay, Caleb has problems, and now this is on him. I think it's a combination. I think it's coaching. I think it's on Caleb. My guess is majority of the problems that Caleb has with a great coach can either be corrected or minimized, and then they'll be able to maximize his strengths. But I do think what it probably looks like more than anything, this is just what my gut tells me, at least right now, is that in order for Caleb to truly succeed, he will truly need a great coach. He will be very coach dependent, especially if a problem is his processing, because I'm not of the camp where you're really going to be able to now all of a sudden be a fast processor, where you're going to be able to make those connections. I think you can probably improve a little bit, but it's like, it's not going to be the difference between being like good and going to elite, or even good to great. You can probably go from average to good. That's probably right. Like, let's say you were just an okay runner. You know, you had okay speed. You can't, like, through training and hard work, like, become now a great runner or elite runner. You either had that ability to begin with and now needed training to unlock it, or you didn't. It's just no one has ever just been like an average runner and then turned into an elite runner. It's just not the way it works. And some runner who's never worked out or knows even like the mechanics of it, they run and you can go, whoa, that guy's fast. With training and strength and conditioning, we can turn that guy into a champion. Like, that's how it works. A quarterback, when they're first learning how to play, they're not like throwing the ball and it just like dribbles onto the ground. They grab the ball, they throw it, and they go, whoa, that is a really nice throw. And then it's like, okay. Like, I mean, we see this. Just look at other NFL players throw the ball. You can tell one's a quarterback, one's not. And these are the best athletes, literally NFL athletes. You ever see fake plays when they have a wide receiver throw the ball, a tight end, or whoever? It looks different. It looks weird. It looks unnatural. You can tell, ooh, not everyone has the ability to throw the ball. I mean, that's very obvious. And so it's the same thing with other skill sets, other talents for players. So it's going to be interesting to see where this lands, honestly. It really is. My issue is, and this will be my last point, is I know some people were concerned about Caleb going into this, and you had some people that were like, hey, he's going to be a bust or this or that. The problem is I never really heard, anytime I heard that side of the take, it was always like hyper fans, like it felt more extreme than anything, right? It never really felt grounded. And what I'm trying to say is, if all this stuff is coming out, all these concerns, and people are now kind of harping on Caleb Williams, like, where was this honest discussion going into the going into the draft, post-draft? Like, where was that? Like, that's my issue with all of this. It was never really honestly discussed in a grounded, like, hey, let's unpack this. Let's look at the pros and cons of Caleb. We didn't get that. We either got 100%, oh my God, this guy's going to take over the NFL, or no, he's not that good. He's overrated. He's a bust. And again, it felt more, the negatives just felt more disingenuous. It never really felt rooted in honest, cogent analysis. At least I didn't see it. I didn't see it in any of these shows. I really didn't. So it's going to be interesting. I still believe in Caleb, that he'll be able to improve and grow. It's interesting to hear Greg Cosell pretty much say that this was not a Shane Waldron problem. I find that really interesting, because there's a couple other people who I also really trust in the media, and also commenters. As you guys know, I reference Travis O'Shea, who at this point is like, coach commenter. And he said that he leaned more, and correct me if I'm wrong, he leaned more towards saying, yeah, like, moving on from Shane Waldron was the right move, that he didn't think that Shane Waldron was doing a good enough job. So I'm interested to see what his response to this is now, because again, I'm only going to have such strong thoughts once we really get into the deep weeds about all of this, because I'm not going to be able to gauge Caleb's processing speed. It's just not for me to gauge. It's really not. It's his ability to see the field and the decisions that he's making. I'll be confident with some of the conclusions that I draw, but other times, in this instance, I'm just going to be like, I have to just wait and see. You got to give me more information, more data, different coaches. I want to see improvements. I want to see regression. I got to see a little bit of everything for me to like be able to draw a firmer conclusion. I unfortunately feel like people are using this whole outcome to just completely just bash on Caleb, and that is what I don't think is 100% fair. And not saying Greg Cosell was bashing Caleb or Colin or any of these people. I'm just saying just in general now more than anything. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Greg Cosell and Colin and just kind of all the conversation around Caleb Williams, right? Like, who's to blame? Where's the problems right now? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.